Okay, it's freezing in here today. I had to be out all day and I hadn't made the video, so now I am in a very cold place. By the way, this video is also a very cold place. This is a major mea culpa. So I'm going to, before we even start, I'm going to offer both congratulations to Alex K for sending this really, really insightful and truthful and correct conversation about squinting and blurring, and I'm going to apologize to you all for not being more clear myself. Let's read it first, but in any case, directly to you, Alex. Thank you very much. It's really, really helpful, and I have a feeling that some people have struggled with what I'm saying because of this idea of what I'm saying with the idea of blurring. But if you look at enough, let me just give you these videos before I start. See this? There's these videos minimally coming out of a fog. Best ways to use your eyes, values and value play. That line is up there. You can look at those. Impressionist practices, use of the eyes, shadows and values. So you'll get this conversation, I think, in all these different places. And I think if you look at them all and perceive what I'm, try to use your eyes this way, you'll know that what I mean by blurring, you'll know what it means. But frankly, that's no excuse. And if there's one thing I do that I, in general, need to be thoughtful about, and that is using words somewhat casually. Frequently, it's the way they were used before me, but in fact, blur and squint have extremely different meanings. And squint doesn't even imply anything. Blur implies something specific, but really specific. And I'm just going to talk about it with you. There's no question that Alex is right on about this, and the usefulness of what I'm telling you is going to go way up if you understand what precisely I mean when I talk about blurring your eyes or blurring down. I know most of you have tried to do it, and instinctively, as I said to you, I've never been taught anything about blurring per se. There's no use that I've ever made of the idea of making a blurriness with your eyes open. I've never, ever used that or intended that to be the meaning here. I also don't like the word squint, by the way. And I wanted to say that I'm uncomfortable squinting. I find it was miserable for my eyes to squint. But I'll give you my best practices in a few seconds. But in any case, I want to get back. Let's read what Alex has to offer. He says, blurring your eyes and squinting your eyes are not equivalent in terms of the effect on value relationships. Absolutely true. This is something I've heard a few times from teachers of painting, and it's not good advice. Now, he hasn't said what the advice was, unless that there is, that isn't clear to me who says what about what, right? And so, as I said to you, I use this word blurring your eyes as a very specific that really has more to do with a version of squinting your eyes. So understand me, I don't equate these two. There's only one thing I'm talking about. I just want you to know that. So if you wanted to look through other videos, you'll know more clearly after this video, I hope, what I've been saying, okay? So for that reason, by the way, I hope you guys will, whenever you see something that seems dubious in any way, bring it to me. I have no problem with, as it were, fessing up if something I'm saying is going to be mistaken because I'm imprecise in the use of a word. In this case, the word blur. So this is something I've heard for a few times from teachers of painting. Not a good advice. If you think about what's happening in terms of vision, you'll understand why. Squinting reduces the amount of light entering the eye. Blurring doesn't. The light reception of the eye remains the same. Squinting simplifies value relationships because of the reduction of light reception. So high contrast shapes remain more discernibly different than low contrast ones. So he's talking about what we're telling you to do. But everybody, if you sit there and looking at me on this screen, if you can do it. You can just cross your eyes a little or other things, and you can actually make me blurry without shutting your eyes in any way at all. And you use your eyes in a very different way. As I said, I've never recommended squinting your eyes, but except that the fact is, the way I tell you when I talk about blurring down, the only way you can do it is by shutting one of your eyes. So I'll show you what I mean exactly in just a second. But I want that to be really clear to you, that what I'm talking about is a very specific thing that does, as Alex says, knock the light out of your eyes so that you can, but it's rather like putting a series of plates, you've seen it probably, smoked glass. You put a series of them out there, and gradually the low contrast things disappear more and more and more, like when you have dark glasses on. And so you're left with, finally, if you blur down enough, you're left with the top visual players, right? So And what I want to say to you about all that before I put a bunch of other junk in front of you is that my entire reason, well, I have two things I use this for. And just so you know, and if you have tried to do this, you will find yourself using your eyes the same way as I do if you've actually succeeded at using it. But if you're confused and don't know what I mean, and you just keep trying to do other things, talk about visual order and stuff, it's such a serious benefit is lost. So what I do, just to make it really clear to you, and I suggest you also look at through your screen to whatever extent you care about this, look at me, close one eye. I'm a left-eyed guy, so I close my right eye, and then I slowly start drooping my eyelids. Now, I've never thought of that as squinting. I think of this as squinting. Okay. But the truth is, Alex is right. Technically, that's squinting. That's bringing the shades down over your eyes, right, with your lashes. So that would be squinting. Okay. I'm still not going to use that word, Alex. So don't get too excited. But I have to reconsider the idea of blurring, unless I say I want you to blur down. Now remember, the whole point of this whole thing was to have you thinking about coming out of the fog, so that when you blur down, and you blur out enough, all you can see is the topmost power players. And I'll talk about these things, one after the other, because I made a list of them for you. But the whole point of this exercise is to get you down to see who's on first. It's establishing the order as if it were coming out of the fog. But the fog in this case is the darkness. So maybe we need to talk about coming out of the darkness, or coming out of the mystery, or something like that. And just who are the shining lights first, right? And those are our areas that we consider first in visual order. So understand what I'm doing. Close one eye and let the other one just sort of begin to droop. And I think you'll start seeing me with just a flash of light here, a flash of light there, probably a piece off my glasses, right? So understand me, okay? That's the game we're talking about. Now let's go on to his second part of this point from Alex. So I've already told you about these. Okay, let me get up past that. So here is Alex. By extension, the same applies to edges, because a hard edge is apparent between high contrast value shapes. That's actually not necessarily true. A hard edge doesn't necessarily, you can have high contrast without having hard edges. But that might be something I'd have to think about some more to see if there's anything about that makes sense in our context. But blurring one's vision does not simplify value relationships. It's true, it does not. Simply blurring doesn't do it. Keep your eyes open and make everything blurry in front of you. It doesn't do it. He's exactly right. This couldn't be more accurate in what he's saying. And I really appreciate the clarification. And then he says, unless it's taken to extremes of blurring, but I don't even know how to do that. And so, as I said, that's not even what I mean. That's not what I'm trying to communicate. I don't want you to make everything blurry in front of yourself. I want you to be coming out of a fog. And I say blur your eye because I do something with my eyes, and it makes everything foggy out there. If I kept my eyes wide open, it wouldn't do the same thing. So he says, but then the simplification affects all value shapes equally, so no advantage is gained in discerning value relationships than when not blurring. I'm glad he's on track with what I'm trying to say. Blurring, Alex, I'm glad that you're on track with it. Blurring does not affect edges as well. Again, for the same reason as its global effect it's a global effect, does the same thing with everything. So it's not a helpful method to discern relationships. So it's really, really, really a good thing to say. And for me to have a chance to back this up and talk about what exactly I'm saying and how we use our eyes is most important. And I'm not even showing images this time, by the way. I'm the image, right? So whatever you're seeing here, I'm going to give you this list, though, and just talk briefly about these points. So you close one eye to get the beginning of this blurring down thing the way I'm speaking about it, okay? So you close that one eye, you blur down, and you will be able to see it. Just calmly close your eye. Don't feel like you won't even feel like your eyes are wrinkling up when you do it. But I'm putting the word squint there on that page, so you can see that I don't mean that he's wrong. He's actually not wrong. I'm still not going to use that word. I don't like the word, but it's not far off. In fact, it's probably the right word, except that squinting always implies to me the sun's about to hit you in the eye, so you shut your lids down. That's okay. Understand, close one eye. This is by far the easiest way to do it. Close one eye and begin the shutting down process. So true lostness and degrees of lostness. So if you blur down enough, you can make it all disappear, right? That's essentially shutting your eyes. You open up your eyes a little bit, and you'll start seeing who's on first. And that's my goal with doing this thing that I've been calling blurring your eyes, okay? That Alex is right about that is the wrong word for it, because we're not trying to blur anything. We're just trying to get the value separations and unities. And I'll give you more on that. So that gives you the visual order, gives the order of the effects. That's point 3. Now, Meldrum talks about this with the idea of light disturbances, right? So you blur your eye down, you'll see who these screaming lights are that are the table setters. And keep in mind, by the way, that this projection toward your eye, all that stuff that happens, edges do have an effect on these effects. The strongest one is going to still be in your eye if its brilliance is such. But there's going to be a power of a value plus an edge that's be greater than if you had the same value, brilliant value, without an edge, with just a softness around it. You understand what I'm saying? If you put them side by side, or look at some part of me where there's a glare versus where there's a same value but a hard edge next to it. So there will be some difference in that sort of a thing, and you should be able to actually discern what's, if you're aware of both of those things at once, you'll be able to discern. There's a slight separation. One may look like it's coming towards you more. Remember, these are appearance-based ideas. They don't necessarily have to mean they're coming towards you at all. One of them may be further back, but this is a visual depth thing. It's a visual effect. So it's projectiveness to your eye, okay? But it also shows you, and that's a point that he was inferring, or more than inferring, with how things hang together. So if you do what I just said, shut one eye, begin to blur down, you'll see the whole field, if you blur down enough, will become very unified, and you'll see 4 points or 5 points. And those are the ones we think of as what's creating the leading effects of the composition, right? What I call the arabesque. And that is modeling, painting in the visual order. That is modeling coming out of a fog. As I said, coming out of fog is the only thing I've ever seen written by a Boston School person who talks about first this, then that. Apart from this idea of it's the right color, the right value in the right place, that suggests something very clear too, doesn't it? That is an order, but it's not the same thing. This is a paint as if you were coming out of the fog. Coming is a verb, right? Coming out. So there's a gradual diminishment of the fog. In this case, if you blur down, in the space I'm in right now, if you're in a very lit room, it won't be dark, but I'm in a dark room, and maybe even you're looking at me, this will feel darker in this area. If you blur down in this kind of a space, it'll turn into a black. But if you're blurring down in a lighted room, it'll just gradually diminish and rather unify the rest of the field of the less contrasty activity, okay? And that's one of our goals, is to say, I used to say to students, the only reason you blur your eyes is to find out who not to paint. So if you understand that, you would have been using your eyes to try to do that for yourself, okay? Again, I thank you, Alex. I really appreciate the value in clarifying this stuff. It may make a difference for people. So, but another thing you get out of it, notice that next line, is the general tonality. So if you blur down a lot, you gradually open up, in certain areas will still stay together, even though you can see there's a lot of stuff in there. And there'll be a general tonality. So the general mass will be a more middle tone in one area, where if you blur down, the overall mass might be such and such, but in any modest area, you can have that same thing, but the unity, so the contrast won't be much. But the area might be generally a different tonality. And that's the whole thing is a general thing. That's one to notice in the Meldrum conversation as well. This idea of the whole field, whatever you're looking at here, there's a general tonality. And if you look to a different part of your house where you're sitting right now and take in another sort of rectangle, you'll be able to see that field is going to be a different. Now, general tonality means the general value. Like overall, what is the general value of this mass here? And it's a general impression thing. It's not. You could argue that it's, and what he does, Meldrum does actually, is argue that it's a single value, and it's a perfectly valuable thing to say. There is a generality about it. I say it about paintings. Remember, I say this is a light picture, or this is a dark picture, or it's a middle tone picture. Well, of course, and a middle tone picture has darks and lights in it, et cetera, right? You follow that? But that's still the case. You can see that there are 3 different values of pictures. And so that's the general tonality of a painting, the general value of painting. Dark picture, middle tone, light picture, okay? Now, I'm going to mention this idea of disfocusing, crossing the eyes, because it's important that you understand that when I'm talking about, I don't talk about blurring your eyes for any purpose. I have no idea of any purpose. Maybe Alex could fill us in if there is a purpose for actually blurring, making your eyes blurry. keeping them wide open and making them blurry. But you know, the opening your eyes, the popping, the keeping of your eyes popped, keeping them wide open. That's the impressionist thing. I mean, let all the color in. Let yourself see it. Take in the field simultaneously, and don't knock it out of focus. Just take it all in at once. But that big eyes. There's a certain amount of blurring you can get out of that if you want it, if it serves you in any way. But the one thing I want to say to you, whatever you do with your eyes blurred, remember this now about the visual order that I talked about from the very beginning. This idea of blurring down, and closing that one eye and blurring down just so you can see 4 or 5 points. Now, after you've laid in your painting, if that same doesn't occur, if you can't close one eye and blur down and blur down and blur down, if that doesn't show those same 5 points, but instead shows 10, while nature, when you blur down the same amount, shows 5, then you obviously have a problem, right? You obviously haven't done the same thing with your painting. Is not accomplishing the same mission. And this is a huge thing to understand when you look at your painting. The use of your eyes here has to be the same as the use of your eyes there. Otherwise, there's no benefit, right? So, and that's true of all comparisons of every kind, as well as this idea of when you blur down, 3 top guys pop up. And when you open up a little bit more, the same thing should happen in your painting as happens in nature. All right, so, but this idea of disfocus, now I think that was the correct term, wasn't it, Lindsay? You corrected me way back when. Lindsay's my zoology doctor and wonderful student and instigator of this whole Ingbret's studio thing, whether she quite admits it or not, accepts it or not. But in any case, she was there and caused this to happen. But this, one of the things you can do if you want to blur, you can sort of cross your eyes, but the idea of disfocusing, it means, the way I mean it, I don't want you to focus on any one thing. I want you to focus on the whole field at once. I want everything to remain, as it were, in focus, like it's a shot of a camera that doesn't have a focal lens, so that there's an equality. And you'll see that in all paintings. I bet you, from at least certainly all the ancient paintings, there's no use of camera mentality at all. There's an ability for you to look at one corner of the picture and then look at the other corner or some part in the middle, and their edges will feel right, as if you were looking at something in nature and just literally with eyes open comparing their edge relationships, etc. So, but one of the values of disfocusing, or not taking your eyes out and not being looking at one little thing, is that you get to see the play of things interrelated. So that's just a different use of the eyes. And I might be going into something that really isn't quite on track with this, but the one thing I want to add, though, to all this stuff is that all your relationships are seen with your eyes open, including those top 5 things. As I said before, probably just about the only really important thing you're doing when you blur your eyes like crazy is to see who's on first. Remember that. Who's up first, okay? And those guys are the ones I'm trying to get you to put time into, really wonderful time into, but you put them into that time into them. No matter what you've done to blur down, they're useless to you. Don't be looking at shapes blurry. You have to paint the shapes as you see them. But it's the chosen shape, the blurring of the eye told you which shapes, okay? That's it. Don't be getting too excited about it. All relationships, color and everything else should be seen with your eyes wide open, okay? All your value relationships should be seen with your eyes wide open. However, let's see if I can do this. Yeah, no, it's not there. But so if you follow where I'm going, what follows on that is this whole thing, your eyes wide open, you're saying, what's the dark is dark. You don't blur your eyes down to see things like that, right? When you see in sets, you're trying to see where the dark is dark, the light is light, and you talk about, for example, the Sargent idea of 3 or 4 major values, 3 to 5 major values in a picture. You're using your eyes in the biggest way you can. You're taking in the whole and trying to see these groups, but blurring down diminishes certain ones at the expense of others. The one thing it gives you, though, is it tells you which ones hang together. So if you blur your eyes, for example, if you're looking at a screen like the one you're looking at now, and it's near a window, and if you pop your eyes big, you'll see that the screen and the window might be roughly the same value. Well, you blur down, and they still the same value. That means they don't join the darks. They tend to be more part of the lights, right? And that's a big value. That's a value of seeing the idea of what's like. The idea of, we talk about in the relational world, it's the likes, it's the contrasts, it's the differences, and the similarities, right? And that's what gives you the sense of how things are hanging together. So if you get a value that's in a halfway place, you blur your eyes down, it will take sides, either with the dark or with the light near it, right? And that's one of the values of blurring your eyes, okay? So those are the three. I've expressed three of them now. One is the idea of a general tonality, how to see what general tonality a whole picture is even. Although that's not, you don't have to do that to see that general tonality. You can just understand it by looking at some other pictures in the room, for example. But the primary one is the visual order, and then you open your eyes to do all your work, right? But you know which ones to work on. And then the last one is this idea of when you're doubtful about a value where it lands, don't just look at it and paint it. Blur your eyes and see which side it joins. And then when you look at your painting, make sure if middle tone is nearer to the dark, that when you blur your eyes at your painting, it emerges. It tends to join with the dark. You don't paint it with the dark. You don't paint it into the dark. You're just seeing that when you get that value right in this spot, that when you blur your eyes, it separates more from the light, tends to join the dark, okay? And vice, or whatever, yeah. So, yeah, I mentioned seeing in sets. All this stuff is only because of the relational world, right? It just helps you do it more clearly. You have to have your eyes open for that. I did mention when I say simultaneous looking, all I mean is make sure the field is all one and let yourself see relationships within this field that you're looking at all at once. So if you're looking at the big field of me here, you should be able to, without looking your eyes around, you should be able to see the set of the redder notes. And you should be able to notice, without looking around, that there's a darker one, a middle tone one, a lighter one, a richer one, and all that. So you should be able to feel that, sense that thing without looking around. So that field is treated in focus, right? There's no blurring to get that kind of stuff. In fact, there's no blurring at all to get anything to do with colors. And I really want to say it again. The blurring that I'm talking about, which you can call squinting now, thanks to Alex, if you want to. I'm still looking for a better word. But this closing down of that, closing one eye and letting the other one come down like a shade, that kind of a world is exclusively for establishing these points, nothing else. I've had students come in and they'll paint the whole painting foggy. Oh, I thought I was supposed to paint it like a haze, like a mist. No. People think that. It's not what we mean. That's not what the concept means. Not the Boston School way. You won't find them doing that, right? So the simultaneity of vision is what I call that, simultaneous looking. But look at things together, and you'll see them in sets. By the way, one of the other things, the counterpoint of that is looking hard at others to see the one you're looking at. Instead of looking hard at the one you're looking at and trying to look at it and to look it onto your painting, look at the one next to it while you're being aware of the one you're trying to correct. Look hard at the one you're not painting. I think this is what's his name, Sergeant Kendall comment to Gamble. Look hard at the one you're not painting. So there is a looking at thing that's useful, but looking at a thing to transfer over to here is way not useful. It's way out of the category. Remember, I've said it before, and I'll say it over and over again. It's all the relationship. All that matters is the relationships. You'll have the unity of the visual impression. So, but matching things as object to object, color to color, and all that sort of stuff, you'll left very far short until you start working relationally. And that's when you'll start winning, when you start working relationally, no matter what you did before that, even in a particular picture. And the minute you start really thinking about the relationships of those things instead of just the fact of them as they match, everything will change. And that's, of course, where I mentioned the comment that Degas made about Humbert, where he says, doesn't he see what he's doing is having these guys just put the painting side by side and transfer the colors over. He said, doesn't he know it's not a relation? Then he talks, Alex talks about the impression of the whole. He calls that global, the impression of the whole, the global, when you take in the whole thing. So I don't use the word global. I'm no fan of that. I love the old words, the words like the whole, the big impression, I hope this isn't going to go out on me. But the big impression, the whole is a great word for it. So let's see, popping the eyes. I've mentioned that already. So now the last part of this is, it's nice to know about the light coming into your eyes, or how, all those things. And that's all, and those kinds of logics fit with some people. But everything you need to do, and you won't be misled by my words if my words aren't really adequate. If you play with these things until they work for you. If you do something with your eyes until you can see what I'm talking about, you can see only 5 top players, and you'll be winding up with your own word to describe what you just did with your eyes. But then again, as I said, whatever you do, then do the same thing with your painting. Make sure it does that same thing if you expect, because that's the set you're trying to establish as the basis. Alex, I really thank you for this. And I don't have anything to add. No pictures today. This list is whatever it is. It just it's a departure, point of departure, but I thought that was worth putting out here for you. So I think we've covered it. I don't think I want to go back and review all these, but this list here, there are more out there too, but this list here, you might look at them, and if you've seen some of these and can't figure out what I'm talking about when I talk about use of the eyes, make sure you try to apply, if the knowledge hasn't come across to you yet, try to apply what I've told you today, and you'll understand these points, that part of these videos better, the points I'm making these. All right. That's it for today. I expected to do this in 5 minutes. Not to dismiss you, Alex, but I guess I can't do anything in less than a half hour. So I really thank you. And I really do hope that you all, when there's something like this that you're pretty sure about, throw it at me. And because I've more than once, including since I've started doing these videos, I've changed a couple, 3 or 4 things that I do and say to students. Several of them on the basis of what you've said. I've learned some things, as I mentioned to you before, from that Amy Osborne I'd never heard of before, right? Was it Amy Osborne? Amy Moore. And in the science of painting and art, and from Meldrum, others. But you guys have done this a couple times now, and this is a value to everybody. I know what I know from practice. I just want to mention that. I know what I know from practice. So if you think I'm saying something wrong, I'm describing practice. I know what I'm talking about, but I am very pleased to find you maybe better word choices. So I consider what I did to be a true, it's a real mea culpa moment, or is it mea in Latin? And I hope you all can go forward and prosper from this point, and forgive me to whatever extent I caused you misunderstanding. It's inevitable. I mean, I don't know how many things I got from Gamble, these aphorisms. I could, got to get a concept of the thing, or you're pushing shapes around all day long. But it's like you can spend a year wondering what the heck that means, playing with things, messing with stuff, and not understand it. So, the whole thing is like in the class of a kind of a mystery, all worked out with your hands and nature in front of you. Never do this from photographs. Do it from nature in front of you. Everybody's got nature in front of them. Stop doing painting from photographs. Stop doing that. Stop working from the Barg stuff. Just draw what you see in front of you, and all the things I'm talking about. You'll see the necessity for all of them. Even if you're from painting from photographs, you'll do it better. But anyway, all righty. Alex, thanks much. Alex K. And see you all in the next one. Don't forget to share, comment further, whatever. Lynn, help me with this, would you? Subscribe, like, all the rest. All right. Okay. And thank you in the past for all your kind donations and very thoughtful comments. There's been some really, really nice ones lately. So, encouraging ones. So thank you all. I wish you the very best. Have a great week of painting.